The snowstorm had rolled in faster than expected, trapping the Millers, except for 17-year-old Ethan, hours away from home. The family's Civil War-era farmhouse stood alone on the edge of a forest, its silhouette barely visible through the swirling snow. Inside, Ethan relished the rare solitude, a fire crackling in the parlor as he played his guitar. But as the night deepened, the house seemed to wake. It started subtly. The sound of a door creaking open upstairs, the sharp clatter of a window shutter blown loose. Ethan brushed it off, chalking it up to the wind. But when the parlor door swung open on its own, he froze. The firelight flickered violently as if disturbed by an unseen gust. His unease grew when he found the door latch unmoved, secure as ever. Determined to distract himself, Ethan ventured to the attic to look for old photo albums his mom had mentioned. The dim bulb illuminated dusty furniture, cobwebbed trunks, and a peculiar chest in the corner. Intrigued, he pried it open. Inside were artifacts from the Civil War, a cracked pocket watch, tarnished medals, and a faded diary. The first entry he read chilled him. He knows. I saw it in his eyes tonight. He'll never forgive me. The handwriting grew shakier with each entry, the last one blotched as though written in a frenzy. There's no escape. He'll bury us all. Ethan shivered, suddenly aware of the icy air creeping through the attic. He could hear faint whispers now, just on the edge of perception, too low to discern but unmistakably present. He shut the chest and fled downstairs. The house was different now. Shadows seemed to shift as he moved, and the knocks that echoed through the walls were deliberate, purposeful. When the cellar doors outside banged open with a deafening crash, Ethan grabbed a flashlight and ventured into the snow. The cellar was empty, save for the faint scent of decayed wood and damp earth. As his flashlight beam swept the floor, it caught something, a patch of freshly disturbed soil. His heart pounded as he knelt, brushing away the dirt. Beneath, he found a skeletal hand. The air around him dropped to an impossible chill. A guttural voice, rasping, angry, echoed through the cellar. You shouldn't have come here. The flashlight flickered, and when the light returned, a figure loomed in the shadows. Hollow eyes glared at him from a face contorted in rage, its body draped in the tattered remains of a Civil War uniform. Ethan bolted for the stairs, the spirit's anguished cries pursuing him. Back in the house, he barricaded the door and called his parents, but the storm had knocked out the phone lines. Desperate, he turned to the diary, flipping through the entries for answers. The final page revealed the truth. The wife's lover had been murdered and buried under the house, cursed to remain as a vengeful spirit. A deafening crash came from the parlor. Ethan ran to see the fireplace blaze, roaring unnaturally high, the flames forming a twisted figure. The spirit lunged, forcing Ethan to retreat into the kitchen. There, the windows shattered inward, snow swirling around him as the entity's rage consumed the house. The wind howled through the night, a deafening roar that erased the world beyond the frosted windows of the Roberts family's car. The storm had struck without warning, burying the roads under layers of thick, blinding snow. Their plans for a cozy cabin weekend now seemed laughable as they shivered in the car, low on gas, miles from civilization. There, Martin Roberts said, pointing to a looming structure silhouetted against the white fury. The headlights revealed cracked walls and boarded-up windows. An old sign barely clinging to the gate read, Saint, Ilara's Asylum. We're not staying there, his wife Claire said, her voice quivering more from unease than cold. We have no choice, Martin replied. We'll freeze out here. Reluctantly, they bundled up their children, Ellie and Sam, and trudged through the biting wind toward the asylum. The heavy door groaned as it opened, spilling them into darkness. Martin's flashlight beam danced across peeling wallpaper, shattered furniture, and graffiti scrawled in frantic, looping letters. This place gives me the creeps, Ellie whispered, clutching Sam's hand. The family huddled in a corner of what once might have been a waiting room. They lit a fire in an old metal trash can, the flickering flames casting long shadows on the walls. The wind outside sounded almost human, a wailing that seemed to echo within the building. As the night deepened, strange sounds emerged from the silence, a faint tapping like fingernails on glass, the scuffle of footsteps in the halls. Claire's head snapped up. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Martin nodded, gripping the flashlight tighter. He ventured into the hallway, the beam slicing through the dark. The air felt colder here, heavy with an unshakable sense of being watched. In the distance, a door creaked open on its own. Martin froze, his breath visible in the icy air. He called out, but only the echo replied. When he turned back, the flashlight flickered, plunging him into momentary darkness. For a split second, he thought he saw a figure, pale, gaunt, and staring, before the light steadied, revealing an empty hallway. Back in the room, Claire was trying to calm the children when Ellie's eyes widened. "Mom!" she whimpered, pointing at the wall. Words were forming in the frost, creeping across the wallpaper. "Leave." Now Martin rushed back, his face pale. "We need to go," he said, his voice low and urgent. But when they opened the front door, the storm's fury made escape impossible. Snow had piled high against the entrance, sealing them in. The whispers began soon after, soft at first, almost imperceptible, then louder, distinct. Voices arguing, laughing, crying. Shadows flickered just beyond the firelight, their shapes impossible to define. Sam began to cry, his small voice muffled by the growing cacophony. "It's the wind," Martin insisted, though his own voice wavered. "No," Claire whispered, her eyes wide. "It's them." Ellie pointed again, trembling. The frost on the opposite wall formed an image, a dozen faces, mouths open in silent screams. The fire sputtered, the flames shrinking as if suffocated. A cold hand seemed to brush Claire's shoulder, and she spun around, finding nothing but shadows. "We have to stay together," Martin said, though even he seemed unsure if it would help. The voices grew louder, almost deafening now. One phrase cut through the noise, repeated again and again. "Stay with us." The final hours of the night blurred into a feverish nightmare. The family huddled close, their terror palpable. When dawn broke, the storm had passed, leaving a brittle, silent morning in its wake. Rescue crews found the car abandoned on the road. The Roberts family was never seen again. But those who dare approach St. Hilara's in the winter claim to hear whispers in the wind, a family calling out for help. The blizzard had transformed the world overnight. The quiet suburban street, usually filled with the sound of cars and barking dogs, was now blanketed in thick, untouched snow. Icicles dangled from rooftops, glittering in the pale sunlight. Every sound felt muffled, as if the snow had swallowed the neighborhood whole. Aaron, Kyle, and Mia stood bundled in coats and scarves, their breath fogging the air as they surveyed the pristine yard. "Let's make the biggest snowman ever," Aaron declared, already scooping snow into his gloved hands. Kyle smirked. "Big enough to scare the neighbors." Mia rolled her eyes. "Or big enough to collapse in an hour. Come on, let's do it right." They worked tirelessly, rolling massive snowballs across the yard. Aaron, in his red scarf and blue jacket, handled the base. Kyle, ever the perfectionist in his yellow parka, shaped the middle. Mia, with her green coat and white knit hat, carefully crafted the head. By mid-afternoon, the snowman was a towering figure of lopsided menace. "What should we call him?" Aaron asked, leaning on his shovel. "How about Snowzilla?" Kyle offered, brushing snow from his gloves. "No," Mia said with a grin, sticking a crooked carrot nose into the snowman's face. "It's Frosty's creepy cousin, the one no one talks about." The three laughed, their voices echoing in the cold air. None of them noticed how the snowman's shadow seemed to stretch longer than it should, even as the sun dipped lower in the sky. As twilight fell, the air grew colder. Aaron, Kyle, and Mia admired their creation one last time. The snowman seemed almost too perfect, or too imperfect. Mia squinted at it. Did it just move? Kyle looked at her, grinning nervously. Yeah, sure. It's coming to life. Quick, run for your lives. Aaron waved a dismissive hand. Shadows. Chill out, Mia. Let's head back before we freeze to death. They turned and trudged home, leaving the snowman behind. But as they walked, the familiar fun of the day began to evaporate. The streets felt too quiet. The wind whistled through the trees, but it wasn't just wind. It sounded like whispers, faint and distant. Halfway to his house, Aaron stopped suddenly. Crap, he muttered. I left my phone back there. Mia frowned. Seriously? Kyle shrugged. It's not like anyone's going to steal it in a snowstorm. Get it tomorrow. No way, Aaron said, already turning back. My dad'll kill me if I lose another one. Just hurry, Mia called after him. Aaron's figure grew smaller as he headed toward the snowman, his red scarf flapping in the breeze. Minutes passed, then 10. Mia and Kyle exchanged uneasy glances. He's probably messing with us, Kyle said, but his voice lacked conviction. You go check on him, Mia said. Kyle sighed. Fine, but if he jumps out at me, I'm punching him. He trudged back into the darkness, leaving Mia alone. The night closed in around Mia. The wind bit at her cheeks, and the silence was oppressive. She called out their names, first Aaron's, then Kyle's. No answer. Her breath quickened as she retraced her steps. Nearing the snowman, she saw something half buried in the snow. Aaron's red scarf. Kyle? She called, her voice trembling. The snow crunched behind her. She spun around, but no one was there. Turning back to the snowman, she noticed something different. It was taller now, and the crooked grin she had made seemed wider. Mia's heart pounded. The snowman's charcoal eyes weren't just dark. They were deep, hollow, and staring directly at her. Frantic, she turned to run, but the snow beneath her feet felt heavier, like it was gripping her boots. She stumbled and fell, the icy cold biting into her hands. From the corner of her eye, she saw it, a shadow moving unnaturally fast across the snow. The snowman wasn't standing still anymore. Its branch-like arms stretched outward, reaching for her. No! She screamed, clawing at the ground, trying to pull herself away. The last thing Mia saw was the snowman's face looming over her, its grin impossibly wide, its eyes consuming the night. The next morning, the neighborhood was silent. The snowman stood exactly where it had been built, its crooked features catching the early light. 3 sets of footprints led to the snowman. None led away.